Coming soon to own on video and DVD.
And get appeal to people, right, and sell, right, but then a song that comes along which goes, girls who like boys who dig girls who like boys who dig girls who like boys who love girls who like boys who dig girls who like boys who love girls who like boys, always.
For this video, I actually wanted to look like a bloke from the 90s, but I did not have enough time to go to my local Goodwill and hopefully find a jersey that could pass for English football, which would have been very fitting because isn't the World Cup happening literally right now? But yeah, like I said, did not have enough time to go out to Goodwill, so I am wearing the next best thing, which is my Beatles shirts. Yeah. When you think of music from the mid to late 90s, you're probably thinking of an array of different genres. You could be thinking about teen pop debut single Baby One More Time by the one and only Britney Spears, or the first thing that popped into your head was Biggie and Tupac and how their feud fueled the East and West Coast rivalry and how gangsta rap and hip hop left a mark on this time period. Or you're actually thinking about the legendary Kurt Cobain and how Nirvana popularized grunge music not only in America but across the pond as well. Hell, you're probably thinking about the generational run of Bjork's first 3 solo albums, Debut, Post, and Homogenic. You know I had to throw that in there, as you may or may not know, Bjork is one of my favorite artists of all time. But I feel like an era we don't talk about enough is Britpop, and not only was it a genre of music, it was also a cultural movement. Throughout every single timeline, every single decade, and every single era, art, pop culture, and especially music has mirrored whatever was going on in societies all over the world. In the Roaring 20s, jazz was the defining genre for that era as it perfectly captured youthful freedom and rebellion post-World War I. The economy during this time had also reached an economic boom. In 1950s America, rock and roll was the sound of the time, as it was also a rebellious time for the youth, especially teenagers, and the lyrics encouraged teenage rebellion. This was also the time after World War II, where the economy was prospering and individuals were gaining a sense of independent identity. I am sensing a pattern here. And in the United Kingdom during the 90s, lead singer of the band Blur, Damon Albarn, saw that his people were getting too Americanized and he felt the need to do something about it. So yes, in today's video, we are going to do a deep dive on Britpop, on both the musical side and the cultural side of this era and British pop culture. And if you're a fan of the channel, love you by the way, you know in my videos I usually give context to why or what inspired me to make a video. It's usually something like, oh, I saw this TikTok, or oh, I read this article, or oh, I just had this thought and I wanted to discuss it. But in actuality, I've heard the term Britpop in the past couple of years, but my stupid American ass just assumed that Britpop was just pop music sung by British people, like how K-pop is literally just pop sung in Korean. But no, there's so much more to it, and Britpop isn't even stereotypical traditional pop music or the type of pop music you think of when you're thinking of pop music. Trust me, we'll get into it in a second. Also, Blur is a band I've been wanting to get into for a while now, and I'm just so interested in them, so low-key, they inspired this video too. With all that being said, let's finally get into the video. I will say before we start, one thing that kind of sucks about making a video, doing a deep dive of a certain genre, is you want to play that music, but because this is YouTube and I don't want to get copyrighted, I can't play any music, which sucks, but I will leave a playlist in the description down below. And as I listen to more Britpop and like form my own favorite songs, I'll later on sometime will make my own playlist and make it public for you guys. But yes, now let's actually get into the video. Before we can even talk about Britpop as a whole, we first have to talk about the era that inspired it, which was the swinging 60s. It was a pivotal time for the UK because it represented social and political change. The swinging 60s was a youth-driven cultural revolution that took place in the United Kingdom during the mid to late 60s, emphasizing modernity and fun-loving hedonism, with swinging London denoted as its center. This is also the era known for its mod and psychedelic subcultures, the sexual liberation movement, and the political activism of the anti-nuclear movement. Throughout the entire decade of the 50s, the prime ministers have all represented the Conservative Party, but from 1964 to 1970, Harold Wilson represented the Labour Party. From the 1950s to the 1960s, post-war London went through a boom in the economy because of the rise of the baby boomers. Also, the draft, referred to as conscription in the United Kingdom, was abolished in the 1960s, so young people had more freedoms and fewer responsibilities, also leading to a social change. Speaking of social change, it was represented in fashion, music, and movies. Music acts such as the Beatles and the Kinks started to form and make anthems about youth rebellion, and social liberation was the overall message of the movement, which really reminds me of America in the 1950s. A popular style for women included miniskirts, especially Mary Quant's design, which you could imagine was a very risky stylist choice as it rejected the idea of what was considered modest, and it absolutely drove conservatives crazy. Another popular style was the bob cut, which was revolutionary for women to have because women having short hair was so against the societal norm. The haircut style was also made popular by fashion model Twiggy. And of course, during this time, British cinema was getting more experimental, more expressive, colorful, and comedic. One of the most famous movie examples coming from this era is Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, released in 1968. Regarding the swinging 60s, London Walks published an article called The Swinging 60s, When London Was the Capital of Cool. A section reads, "It didn't end when the 1960s ended though. This subversive scene had re-emerged in different guises. Punk in the 70s, New Romantics in the 80s, and Britpop in the 90s, for example. But this creative, youth-centered culture and time of change was something radically different from the formerly buttoned-up Britain." So if Britpop wasn't a bunch of British people singing pop music, what exactly was it? Britpop was a British music and cultural movement that emerged in the 1990s. Musically, it produced bright and catchy alternative rock that drew heavily on the 1960s guitar-based British pop, with lyrics that emphasized national identity and offered commentary on British culture and society. The movement was seen as a reaction against the darker lyrical themes and soundscapes of the American-led grunge and the more introspective shoegaze scene in Britain. It helped bring British alternative rock into the mainstream and became a key part of the broader Cool Britannica phenomenon, which echoed the spirit of the swinging 60s. The Britpop era started in 1993 and ended in 1997. I also want to define Cool Britannica, as Britpop played a major key role in this time period. Cool Britannica was a name for the period of increased pride in the culture of the United Kingdom in the mid to late 90s, inspired by swinging London from 1960s pop culture. This loosely coincided with the latter years of John Major's Conservative government and the 1997 United Kingdom general election, which Tony Blair's New Labour won in a landslide. Britpop and musical acts such as Oasis, Blur, and the Spice Girls were at the forefront. The term, a pun on the title of the patriotic song Rule Britannica, reflects renewed optimism in the United Kingdom after the tumultuous 1970s and 1980s. Which makes perfect sense because optimism has always been a trait within British people and British culture. I mean, literally keep calm and carry on. Now back to Britpop. Within their music, attitude, and clothing, Britpop bands included elements such as Britpop music of the 60s, glam and punk rock of the 70s, and indie pop of the 90s. Popular Britpop band Blur drew inspiration from the Kinks and Pink Floyd. Oasis took inspiration from bands like the Beatles. The song Wonderwall is inspired by George Harrison's first solo album, Wonderwall Music, and Oasis's song Don't Look Back in Anger is named after David Bowie's song Look Back in Anger. In fact, the Kinks' Ray Davies and XTC's Andy Partridge are noted as the godfathers of Britpop. Stylistically, Britpop used catchy hooks and lyrics that spoke to young British people of their own generation. Britpop bands heavily denounced grunge as they believed it didn't speak to their lived experience. But not everyone in the Britpop scene hated grunge music. Noel Gallagher of Oasis fucked heavy with Nirvana and actually respected Kurt Cobain's songwriting. But Damon Albarn, well, he was a different story. In 1993, MME's John Harris asked Damon Albarn if Blur was an anti-grunge band. He responded by saying, Well, that's good. If punk was about getting rid of hippies, then I'm getting rid of grunge. Which I like to believe that he said in a very playful and cheeky way. The imagery you would associate with Britpop would be British, obviously, working class, unabashed, been drinking, and lad culture. The Union Jack also became a prominent figure in the Britpop era, displaying cultural pride and identity. But because it was so unapologetically British, most Americans didn't understand specific references, so it made it difficult to be a success in the United States. This actually reminds me of the A24 movie The Moment, starring singer Charlie XCX, and the mockumentary is about her navigating through fame during the Brat era of 2024. It reminds me of the movie because British humor also doesn't usually translate to an American audience. Apparently, a lot of Americans didn't think the movie was funny, or like I said, they just didn't get the humor. Blur's first album, Leisure, released in 1991, had a shoegaze vibe. But with their second album, Modern Life is Rubbish, released in 1993, they started to have what can only be described as a very British sound. This was inspired by a tour they went on in the US in 1992. Damon Albarn began to resent American culture and found the need to comment on the influence seeping into Britain, as grunge music was becoming very popular in the UK in the early 90s. The term Britpop came to be when the media was mentioning the growing success of British designers, aka young British artists, and films around the late 80s and early 90s. But it wasn't until 1994 when UK media started to refer Britpop to contemporary music and events, and that is how Britpop was born.
It's been described as the British Heavyweight Pop Music Championship. In one corner, 4 young middle-class men from the south of England, collectively known as Blur, and in the other corner, 5 young working-class men from Manchester, called Oasis.
There are so many bands that flourished during the Britpop era. Suede, Elastica, and Pulp being a few examples, but nobody, and I mean nobody, held a candle to Oasis and Blur. So much so that there was even a chart-topping rivalry between the two bands. Yes, you heard that correctly. Before there is Britney versus Christina, Olivia versus Sabrina, and Kendrick versus Drake, there was the Battle of Britpop, Oasis versus Blur. Blur are an English rock band formed in London in 1988. The members are lead singer Damon Albarn, guitarist Graham Coxon, bassist Alex Jones, and drummer Dave Rowntree. Because of the chart-topping battle with Oasis, Blur popularized the Britpop genre and was very popular in the UK. Parklife's lead single, Girls and Boys, became a hit in the UK and America, peaking at number 59 on the Billboard Hot 100 and peaking at number 5 on the UK singles chart. Oasis are an American rock band formed in Manchester in 1991. The band consists of the Gallagher brothers, Noel and Liam. Noel does guitar and vocals, and Liam does lead vocals. Paul Bonehead Arthurs on guitar, Paul Geisy McGuigan on bass guitar, and Tony McCarroll on drums. Oasis are recognized as one of the most influential rock bands of all time. And the thing about Blur and Oasis is in the past they have praised each other, but what led to this rivalry between the two bands? It all started on August 14, 1995, when both bands released singles on the same day. Oasis with Roll With It and Blur with Country House. Both songs chopped the UK singles chart, with Blur coming in at number 1 and Oasis coming in at number 2. Not only was the rivalry about the music, but it was also about British class and regional divisions. Oasis representing the north of England and Blur representing the south. The public was eating up this rivalry, so much so that it was in newspapers, it was on television news, and in the tabloids.
Blur have always played up their cheeky Londoner image, while Oasis revel in being seen as northern hard men. Blur support Chelsea, whereas Oasis are fans of Manchester City. And Blur nicknamed Oasis Oasis Quo because they say their songs all sound the same. Oasis say Blur are a bunch of middle-class art students.
According to my research, the tabloids did dramatize the feud between the bands for obvious public appeal, but Noel Gallagher and Damon Albarn, both frontmen of their respective bands, did hold animosity towards each other. Blur were deemed the greatest pop rivalry ever since the Beatles and Rolling Stone, and oftentimes in interviews they would throw jabs at each other. On August 20th, 1995, Blur's Country House sold 274,000 copies, while Roll With It by Oasis sold 216,000 copies. But in the long run, Oasis was the more successful band in both home and abroad. In the months following the chart battle, New Music Express stated that Britpop became a cultural phenomenon. Oasis' second album, What's the Story Morning Glory, sold over 4 million copies in the UK, becoming the 5th best-selling album in UK chart history, while Blur's 4th album, The Great Escape, sold over 1 million copies. At the 1996 Brit Awards, both Morning Glory and The Great Escape were nominated for Best British Album, with Oasis winning. They were also nominated for Best British Group and Best Video, but Oasis won both of those awards too. While accepting the award for Best Album, Oasis taunted Blur by singing the chorus of the song Part Life and changing the lyrics to Shite Life.
And all the fans, all the people who make us what we are, I'd like to thank all the people. All the people, so many people, and they walk your counting hands, and it has through their shite life.
In a 2019 interview, Oasis bandleader Noel Gallagher reflected on the chart-topping rivalry between his band and Blur, and actually would have liked to see a battle between Oasis' Cigarettes and Alcohol and Blur's Girls and Boys, and thought it would have had more merit. He also said that him and Damon Albarn, who he has had multiple collaborations with, are in fact friends. So they literally worked it out on the remix. And they don't talk about their 90s rivalry, with Albarn stating, "I value my friendship with Noel because he is one of the only people who went through what I did in the 90s. Noel Gallagher has also described Blur guitarist Graham Coxon as one of the most talented guitarists of his generation. Britpop reflected those of the working to middle class, so of course, style and fashion played a major role in this era. On December 5th, 2024, Ollie Cox published an article titled 7 Canonical Style Lessons Straight from the 90s. A couple of the excerpts read, "It's a day-to-day, mufti, the kind of thing you wear to the pub with your mates. The way Britpop musicians dress definitely helped shape the impact. It was relatable and knowing. There's a lot of references to Terrence culture and mod, which resonated with a huge amount of people. It felt distinctly British, so you could take ownership of it. It was affordable, accessible, easy, and your dad would approve. It was taking a look from your average northern white man, putting him on stage, singing about everyday life, pumped full of booze, drugs, and testosterone," says British artist Corbin Shaw. Some articles of clothing you'll typically see in Britpop fashion would be outerwear, baggy jeans, Adidas trainers, mod cuts, jackets, football tops, and jerseys and parkas. Speaking of mod cuts, it was a hairstyle inspired from the 60s, which makes sense because, like I said earlier, a lot of the style influence was inspired by what was happening within the swinging 60s. The Britpop fashion style, a lot of the time, fused 60s and 70s fashion with modern, casual, everyday pieces. Before the Britpop movement, there was a musical/cultural scene that emerged into Manchester during the late 80s called Manchester. It involved blending indie rock with acid house, psychedelica, and 1960s pop. Because the Manchester movement and the Britpop era are so closely together, some of the fashion tropes associated with Manchester seeped its way into Britpop style, baggy jeans being the most notable item. But baggy jeans are so iconic, they appear in so many subcultures, the grunge scene, Manchester, and Britpop. Nowadays, a style/aesthetic we have similar to Britpop is blokecore, and let me tell you what that is. According to Aesthetics Wiki, blokecore is a fashion trend that draws inspiration from British football culture, especially featuring retro club uniforms from the 80s and 90s. The term bloke, a British slang term for a man similar to bro and dude, was incorporated into the trend's name. The term was coined by American TikToker Brandon Huntley. Key motifs include old football jerseys, basic jeans, and Adidas sneakers. Thrift House article, 90s Fashion, How to Dress Like the Britpop Bands, perfectly sums up the vibe and the style of Britpop fashion. It reads, a bit scruffy, a bit cheeky. Britpop bands dress like any lad would on the street. Going on stage in football shirts and tracksuits was a style that was both anti-establishment and anti-fashion for the time. These were the clothes you'd wear to the pub for a pint to watch the football, not the clothes of rock stars or performers. They blended these sports clothes with influences from 60s mod looks, adding a bit of alt-rock by wearing jeans instead of tracksuit bottoms, vintage military jackets and bowl cuts, and colored lens glasses of the Beatles. This created a whole new style that made Britpop stand out as a unique fashion on its own. Oasis' third album, Be Here Now, was released in 1997. It was highly anticipated, was selling very well, and received a lot of positive reviews. But music critics strongly criticized this record. Noel Gallagher himself thought the record was overproduced. Music critic John Savage pinpointed that with the release of this album, this is when the Britpop era has officially ended. Around this time, Blur distanced themselves from the genre with their self-titled album released in 1997, exploring more of an American lo-fi influence. Albarn explained to New Musical Express in January 1997 that, "We created a movement. As far as the lineage of British bands go, there will always be a place for us. We genuinely started to see the world in a slightly different way." Which makes total and complete sense, because it is very natural for artists to want to evolve and venture out and explore different genres and styles of music throughout their career. Britpop bands began slowly dying down because bands were breaking up, the Spice Girls were gaining popularity, and Radiohead started to gain more attention, as they were known for their melancholic, sensitive songwriting. Radiohead's 1997 album OK Computer influenced post-Britpop bands like Travis, Stereophonics, and Coldplay, with a more introspective sound than 90s Britpop. These bands, especially Coldplay, became some of the most successful rock acts in the late 90s and early 2000s. At the beginning of the 2010s, a new wave of bands emerged and fused indie rock with Britpop of the 90s. Via Brother, an English rock band, revitalized Britpop with their debut album Famous First Words, also dubbing it as Gritpop. Also around this time, large Britpop bands started to reunite, some very famous examples including Suede and Pulp. In 2024, Oasis became the highest prolific Britpop band to reunite with the Oasis Live 25 tour, starting on July 4th to November 23rd. Which was highly successful due to the reviving interest of Britpop culture. Also, Coldplay has the highest grossing tour by a band in music history with their Music of the Spheres tour, selling 13.1 million tickets and generating over $1.5 billion. Also, record producer A.G. Cook, best known for collaborating with Charlie XCX, released an electronic album called Britpop in 2024, and I think you should go listen to it. Wow, Britpop was truly a moment, and it was truly an era. And we can't forget about it. We shouldn't forget about it. We can't forget about Britpop. We just can't. Okay, now, so it's time for my final thoughts. And I actually did write stuff down, but I only wrote down like literally a few bulletin points because I didn't want to write like a whole ass paragraph for this part, because like I've talked so much throughout this video and I wrote so much, so it's like I need to give myself a little bit of a break, so this part is going to be a little bit unscripted. Okay, first thing I want to say is that if I was a lad in the UK in the mid to late 90s, I would have had the biggest faddish crush on Damon Albarn. Like, he just seems like such a cool guy. Like, still to this day, he seems like very cool. But like back then, I really would have had a crush on that man. Like, that would have been like Blur posters would have been all over my wall. Yeah. The second thing I want to say is I had so much fun. I always say this in every single video, but I had so much fun researching and writing this this video essay. But goddamn, it was such a long there was a lot of notes I took. It was a lot of writing, but it was worth it because. But then it was also like not stressful, but it was just a lot because, like, you know, like I have my regular like real 9-to-5 job, so I had to like do that, and then I would come home tired as hell, body sore, but like I would still write for this video. And then also with Love Island, and I'm watching season 8. I'm currently watching season 8, yeah, with Love Island happening right now. It's like it's like hard to kind of like navigate work and Love Island and making this video and writing this video. And literally, I haven't watched a movie ever since last month because all this month so far, I have just been working on this video. So, yeah, like that's like the one thing that's kind of like hard, like trying to like have a YouTube channel and like have a job. Like it's hard balancing everything. But again, like I said, totally worth it. I loved writing this video. Like, my favorite thing about making this video was all the research, all the things I learned about Britpop. Like, I actually learned what Britpop actually was. And of course, I've already heard about Oasis and Blur, obviously, but I did not know that there was a literal pop. I didn't know there was like a pop band rivalry between them. Like, that was like actually kind of crazy finding that out. And I will always just find it interesting based on a society's maybe economic state or political state, that feeling people have, it will reflect in the art, in the pop culture, and especially music. Like exactly how I mentioned before with the 1920s and the 1950s, there was such a social change and an economic change, and that just led people to you know, rebel against traditional norms. And I don't know, I just find that very interesting. It's like the old saying goes, history repeats itself. And of course, it was no different with the Britpop era. But now you guys, it is your turn. That's right, I am passing the mic to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions about Britpop as a genre or as like a cultural movement. Do you think you would like get into Britpop, or are you already into like alternative rock, or is it just not your vibe? And literally, if you're British, if you're literally watching this from across the pond, let me know how I did. Let me know how I did. Did you like this video? Oh, and if you lived through the mid to late 90s in the UK, I would just love to know your thoughts and opinions on this and your perspective, because you actually lived through that time period. So yeah, just let me know. Just tell me whatever you want in the comments. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching. And skaters, I will see you later. I will see you later, skaters. Thank you so much for watching this video. I love you 3000, and I'll see you next time. Bye.